Non-duality means things that appear to be separate are not really separate, but are different manifestations of the same underlying reality. One way to understand this is to examine form and substance. Take gold, for example. Many things can be made from gold, giving it form. One can make objects, animals, or people with gold. But these forms depend on the substance of gold, which has a reality independent of form. By studying the properties of gold rather than its forms, one understands a deeper reality. Another way is to examine energy. Take electricity, for example. Electricity can manifest as motion in a fan, as light in a light bulb, as sound in a speaker. In a computer, it manifests as an intelligence that can perform complicated tasks. The concept of non-duality first appeared in the Vedas, ancient spiritual and philosophical texts in India. During the Vedic times, spiritual attainment was so highly valued that half of human life was dedicated in its pursuit. In that system, the first quarter of life was devoted to study, the next quarter to household and worldly duties, and the remainder to spiritual progress. This concerted effort over many generations produced an extensive philosophical and spiritual body of work known as the Vedas. There are 4 principal Vedas. The distilled essence of Vedas appears in books called the Upanishads, which are considered parts of the Vedanta, meaning combination of Vedas. One Upanishad that explores non-duality in great details is the Chandogya Upanishad. A part of Sama Veda, scholars estimate it is around 3,000 years old. In chapter 6 of this Upanishad, a dialogue takes place between the sage Udalak and his son Shwetaketu. When Shwetaketu was 12 years old, he went away for higher studies, similar to our college education. When he returned after 12 years, he was so full of pride that Udalak became concerned. Being the wise sage he was, Udalak asked Shwetaketu, "My son, in your studies, did you learn about what powers our perception, but itself cannot be perceived? Did you learn about what gives us the ability to know, but itself cannot be known?" Shwetaketu was humbled by this simple question. Although he had learned about medicine, mathematics, and rules of proper conduct, he had not learned anything about the nature of reality. So he asked Udalak, "Father, will you please teach me?" Udalak then discussed form and substance. Just as one can understand the essence of things by studying the substance rather than the form, one can understand the nature of reality by understanding the root cause of consciousness. In Vedas, the root cause of consciousness is called Brahman, the supreme reality. At the conclusion of this examination of fundamental reality, Udalak made this famous statement, "Tat Tvam Asi," or "Thou art that." The root cause of consciousness, the timeless and formless essence that you are. In other words, the individual self is the same as Brahman. It just appears separate and different. The statement, "Thou art that," is called a Mahavakya, a supreme statement. All 4 Vedas have similar Mahavakya, such as, "Inner consciousness is Brahman," "This self is Brahman," and "I am Brahman." The reason these teachings are called Vedanta is because the teaching, "Thou art that," is the ultimate teaching. One cannot improve upon this teaching, but can only aspire to understand and express it more fully. Various sages have described this ultimate truth in different ways. Perhaps the clearest explanation was given by Shankar, who wrote a small poem called Atma Shatakam, meaning 6 verses for the self. The poem says, "I am not the mind, nor intellect, nor ego, nor senses. I am beyond. I am none of the triad of the observer, the process of observing, or the object being observed. I am all-pervasive. I am without attributes and without form. I have attachment neither to the world nor to liberation. I have no wishes for anything, because I am everything, everywhere, every time, always in equilibrium. I am indeed that eternal knowing and bliss, that love and pure consciousness, the Supreme Being." You may wonder, is non-duality just a philosophy, or does it have any basis in real experience? If we look at the foundations of Vedanta, which predates religions, it was not mere philosophy. It had 3 logical foundations. In fact, it closely aligned with the scientific method, which was developed thousands of years later. The first foundation is Shruti, collective wisdom. This corresponds to teachings and books. The second is Yukti, reason. The third, and most important, is Anubhav, experience. Considering that sages in that time had no means of formal scientific inquiry, it is understood that all of this knowledge resulted from their own inner experience. The direct personal experience of Brahman is called Samadhi, which means absorption in oneness. It is due to the experience of Samadhi that Brahman is known by another name, Satchid Ananda. The word Satchidananda has 3 parts. Sat means truth. This is not ordinary truth, but truth that is outside the confines of time and space, and thus absolute existence. Chit means consciousness. Ananda means bliss. A note of clarification on bliss. It is not that Brahman is bliss, but that the human experience of Brahman is bliss. Brahman is beyond attributes. Going back to our example of electricity, if you wanted a direct personal experience of electricity, by touching a wire, you would experience a shock. But electricity itself is not a shock. Similarly, Brahman is this primal energy which manifests in the universe, and human experience of this energy is bliss. Samadhi is the highest human experience. Over time, a technology called yoga was developed to make this experience available to seekers. Yoga means the union of the individual self, which has forgotten that it is Brahman, with the Supreme Self. If you look at the experience of yogis from the earliest known accounts to the modern age, they discuss samadhi in which they experience oneness with all creation. Out of dozens of biographies and autobiographies about such yogis, the most popular ones are Autobiography of a Yogi, Play of Consciousness, and Sadguru, More Than a Life. Perhaps the best explanation of non-duality comes from the Ra material, which calls non-duality the law of one. You are everything, every being, every emotion, every event, every situation. You are unity. You are infinity. You are love light, light love. You are. This is the law of one. A great development in our understanding of reality has happened with the journey of modern physics, which broke down the notions of duality that were so firmly set by Newtonian physics. Newtonian physics is an epitome of duality. In this paradigm, objects move in space because of forces acting on them. Each object is separate from each other and the forces. The Newtonian worldview considers the universe a big, completely deterministic machine. In this view, there is no importance given to consciousness, because matter is seen as the foundation of reality, which somehow creates consciousness, but itself is independent of it. This worldview began to fall apart in the 20th century with the arrival of relativity and quantum mechanics. Relativity breaks down the duality of matter and energy. Einstein's famous equation says that matter is energy. Even more important, time and space are fundamentally the same physical entity, known as space-time. Our understanding took another revolutionary leap with quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics studies fundamental particles such as electrons, protons, and quarks. When physicists studied these particles, they discovered something puzzling. These particles are not particles at all, but are waves of possibilities. An electron is not a tiny ball circling the nucleus. It is all around the nucleus at the same time, creating the electron cloud. Quantum mechanics also breaks down the barriers between the observer and the observed, hence recognizing consciousness as the primal cause which changes a fundamental particle from a wave that exists over extended space into a localized particle. The act of observation brings it into existence from the unmanifested field of possibility. The quantum fields which give rise to different particles arise from a single field, sometimes known as the source field, or zero-point energy, or simply the field. In the past few decades, significant research has been done to understand the field and its relationship to consciousness. It appears that the field is the energetic backdrop of all existence and connects every part of the universe with everything else through non-local quantum effects. Most importantly, the field responds to consciousness, as shown by experiments with devices called random event generators. If you have a device that creates zeros and ones, in the language of computers, a truly random event generator will produce an equal number of zeros and ones. That is exactly what we see from a generator when no human intention interferes with it. But when people or groups of people focus their attention on this generator, they can move it away from this equal distribution to generate either more zeros or more ones. Other phenomena of group consciousness can also be explained using the field, such as a drop in a city's crime rate, when there are sufficient numbers of trained meditators focusing their intention together. If you are interested in exploring the science of such experiments, please read the book The Field. To conclude, there is an underlying reality that manifests this universe. Our individual consciousness is the same as that supreme reality. How can you put this knowledge of non-duality into practice? Here are the steps. First, know yourself as a divine being, because you are an aspect of the Source. You are giving the Source an opportunity to look through your eyes and experience its own creation. This knowledge removes mental distortions such as fear. If you are the Source, what is there to be afraid of? There is no reason to fumble in the dark when you realize that you are the light itself. Get rid of toxic thought patterns that contaminate mass consciousness. In particular, you are not a sinner. You are not a frivolous creation of a judgmental and petty God who wants you to obey his will. That is just a story made up by institutions that want to control you. It is time to take your power back from those institutions and walk on this earth as manifestations of the Source energy, expressing the primal joy and love that you are. Second, stop judging and criticizing yourself for perceived flaws. There are no flaws. only aspects of perfection to be explored. This is similar to art, which can always be improved upon, but that doesn't mean it's flawed. Instead of self-judgment, treat yourself with compassion and self-love. Third, you are one with all conscious beings and entire creation. Once you see others as source, you let go of the need to control them, manipulate them, or have power over them. You also stop judging them for perceived imperfections. Instead, you treat them with love and compassion because they are extended parts of your being. So honor them, offer them your love through service, and make relationships the joyous journey of creativity, genuine communication, and shared experience. Fourth, the material and the spiritual are the same. You did not come here to transcend physicality, because physicality is a manifestation of the Source. You came here to perceive physicality as divine, and in the process become an instrument of joy. This requires you to examine deeply held beliefs about physicality, including the expression of sexuality. Let go of shame and guilt associated with expressions of physicality, and ask yourself, how would I express my physicality if I knew myself as a divine being? Fifth, know that your incarnation has a built-in purpose. The purpose is to explore physicality, relationships, service, and your own highest potential. You are here to manifest higher spiritual qualities in every aspect of your daily life. This is a divine undertaking, one that may take many incarnations to perfect. But the journey should be taken with a spirit of gratitude and purpose, not as a burden or suffering. All suffering is a mental illusion that exists so that you can transcend it and know yourself as the Source, the absolute reality, Brahman.